Hey Astro Kids, and welcome back. In today's video, I want to talk with you guys a little bit more about Scorpio and this karmic connection to the sign of Scorpio. So, for those who don't know, Scorpio is a heavily karmic sign. It is controlled by Ketu, and it is associated with this ability to regenerate or recover from difficult or trying times. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about that and why that actually happens. What is the sole purpose? What is the lesson? What is the karma that is connected to this actual sign? So the question that we're trying to tackle here in this video is, why does Scorpio find the strength to bounce back from defeat? This is essentially what Scorpio does karmically, is it is able to overcome obstacles and difficulties, particularly on an emotional level, right? We talked about how Scorpio is a fixed water sign. So there's a lot here in terms of Scorpio's ability to overcome these darker or lower emotions. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this. There is actually a karmic understanding behind this actual sign. This is heavily karmic for those of you who have strong Scorpio placements, and I will talk a little bit about each of the different Scorpio placements that you can have in your chart and how that can impact you for those of you who have this. So there is a lot that is connected to this overall. But before we get into that, we have to understand what is Scorpio, because this is going to explain a lot to us about this actual karmic lesson or karmic understanding behind the nature of Scorpio. So Scorpio is a fixed water sign. So you can think of this in terms of ice, or you can think of it in terms of a still body of water. There's this idea that on the surface, Scorpio is very cool, it's very relaxed, it's very detached, right? This is coming off as a very laid back type of energy with Scorpio. But deep at the core, there's a lot of deep, intense emotion. And so this is connected to Scorpio being this mysterious or secretive sign, right? That is what we typically think of when we think of the sign of Scorpio, is secrets, mystery, the things that are hidden. This is associated with Scorpio. And it's interesting because in astrology, we typically think of Pisces as being one of the most spiritual or mystical types of signs. The sign of Scorpio is also very spiritual and mystical as well. The reason being is because Scorpio is controlled by Ketu. Ketu, remember, is one of our shadow planets. It is not an actual planet, it is one of the nodes of the moon, the south node. We call this in Vedic astrology a shadow planet. So it has these shadowy aspects to it, these shadowy aspects of the human psyche. So when we're talking about the shadow planets, the two planets that are dealing with these shadowy aspects of life are Rahu and Ketu. These are dealing with things like fear, jealousy, manipulation, right? The darker side of the human psyche. Now, there's a difference between Rahu and Ketu. Rahu is dealing with unfulfilled desires in a previous life. And so Rahu has this hunger, this desire for more. Ketu is actually about taking us out of this material world, which we refer to as the Maya, the illusion. And so Ketu's role is to show us that not everything that is tangible or material is everything that there is in life. There's more that is hidden behind that. And so Ketu gives us this ability to uncover the things that are hidden. Ketu is connected to past life information. It's connected to mystical knowledge. Ketu essentially takes us out of the physical and shows us the things that lie beyond this physical reality that we exist in. And so this is highly connected to the sign of Scorpio, because Scorpio is all about the things that are hidden deep underground. Scorpio has this detective nature to it, this ability to figure out the things that are buried deep beneath. So when we talk about Scorpio, we tend to think of things like tarot, the occult, astrology, mysticism, right? This idea that Scorpio has this ability to tap into information that is rejected by society or that is misunderstood by others. So Scorpio has this ability to tap into deeper hidden knowledge. And this is where Ketu's role comes in with Scorpio. Now, the other thing about Ketu, right, because not everything is a positive thing, there are negatives to this as well. So Ketu being a planet that deals with the things from the past, the things that are hidden, the things that are mystical. It is a planet that holds the karma or the desires of which we've already fulfilled. So K2 has this very complacent nature to it where it wants to stay in what it is. This is also connected to Scorpio, again, because it is a fixed water sign. Scorpio has this tendency to hold on to past regrets, to deep, intense emotions that need to be released and let go of. So there is this toxic or poisonous attachment when it comes to Scorpio, right? And this is connected to, again, the symbolism of Scorpio being the scorpion with the poisonous stinger. This idea that Scorpio has this toxic or heavy, deep emotional attachment that needs to be expelled, the expelling of the poison, right? So this is connected to K2 being connected to past fears, being connected to irrational things. Remember that K2 takes us out of this physical reality. So if you are in a space where you're not ready to leave this physical world and you do leave it, there is a lot of disillusionment. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of this inability to see things clearly, right? We lose track of things when we're trying to hold on to the physical, but we're being pulled or drawn out of the physical. And so that's also connected to K2 and Scorpio being about these irrational fears or these internal obsessions that are going on within the psyche. This inability to let go of things that no longer serve us. And so Scorpio has this tendency to replay things within the deeper recesses of the mind, to replay the deepest fears, to replay these emotional difficulties and hangups within the mind. And this is highly connected to the sign of Scorpio, and it's highly connected to the karma of Scorpio as well, which we will talk about in a moment. So Scorpio is also controlled by Mars. Mars is strongest in the sign of Aries. It is a very impulsive planet. Mars is what we refer to as the soldier or the general in the planetary cabinet. It has this aggression, this strength, this determination to it. Mars wants to protect, it wants to conquer. It has this soldier mentality to it. And so this plays a role in the sign of Scorpio as well. Now, again, Mars is strongest in the sign of Aries. So in Aries, we see that external energy playing out with Mars, where it is much more this outward aggression, this desire to protect and defend outwardly. With Scorpio, it is more internal, right? Scorpio is very much secretive, defensive. There's this idea that Scorpio, just like a scorpion, can detect nearby threats. And so Scorpio has this sort of paranoid and observant nature to it, where it is reading in between the lines. It is looking at other people's intentions and motives, trying to figure out who a person really is before fully letting them in. And so, this idea that Scorpio is making sure that there aren't any threats, that there aren't any hidden motives of others that could cause misfortune. So, this defensive mode, and this is highly connected to primal energy, right? Something that we will talk about in a little bit here is that Scorpio is originally connected to the eighth house of the zodiac, which has to do with the pit. It is, when we think of this energy of the eighth house, it is like a pit, right? It is like going deep within And deep down within, there is this energy, this life force. So when we talk about Scorpio, it's highly connected to the Kundalini energy, this primal life force energy that exists deep within. And Scorpio is actually connected to the generative system and the spinal area of the body as well, which is where this primal energy is stored. So this is connected to this primal urge, this primal energy, which is very animal-like, right? Just like how an animal would defend or protect their territory. So this defensive mode, this desire to protect and defend, this desire to attack when threatened is there in Scorpio as well. And so this is something that is also connected to the karma of Scorpio. This sign of Scorpio is meant to protect and defend. On the negative end, though, this energy can become very controlling, very dominating, very possessive in this desire to protect and defend. And so there's a lot of karma that is connected to this that has to do with fear, that has to do with these irrational thought patterns of something being out to get you, of something that may not go your way with this Scorpio energy. And so this becomes very difficult to get past the secrecy, to get past the mystery, to get past the defensiveness of this energy. And again, this is connected to the karma of Scorpio, this idea of a pit, of holding these deep, intense emotions that are hidden within. This is also connected to the idea that Scorpio is a sign that has to do with past life karma. Scorpio, anyone who is born with a significant Scorpio placement has a karmic debt that they're paying off in this lifetime. And so Scorpio actually is not here to collect karmic debt. They are here to release it, to let go of it, right? And this, again, becomes a very difficult thing to do as Scorpio is a fixed water sign. It is all about holding on to or containing these feelings. And so this heavy attachment, this heavy obsession with holding on or containing these deeper levels of emotional intensity is holding back this ability to release and detach from these karmic binds that no longer serve us. So Scorpio has this karmic mission of letting go, of releasing. And not only is this releasing this heavy toxic energy within the Scorpio, but also this is breaking ties karmically through the entire ancestral line. Because remember that Scorpio is connected to Ketu. It is ruled by Ketu, which is the planet of past knowledge. So Scorpio is highly connected to the ancestral line, to the cycles and patterns that have been passed down through the generations. And so Scorpio has this ability of healing and breaking through this karmic backlog, through this ancestral curse, through these repeating cycles and patterns that are passed down through the bloodline. This ability to release and let go of this gives Scorpio the ability to rise out of the pit, rise out of this darker place and into the light. And this is lighting the path for future generations to come, right? And if you were here for the video on Scorpio rising, we talked a lot about how Leo rules the 10th house, the highest point in the chart. And Leo is controlled by the sun, which is the light, the consciousness. And so this is Scorpio's journey is from the darkness, right? The shadowy parts of the human psyche and rising above that, overcoming that and rising up into the light, into the consciousness. And so Scorpio has this ability to bounce back or regenerate from difficult times because Scorpio is here to heal and release these difficult or heavier emotions. Scorpio has this healing ability to actually transform the darkness into light. So this energy here is very intense, and this is why typically in tropical astrology we talk a lot about the phoenix being connected to Scorpio, right? This idea of the phoenix that burns into ashes and rises back out of its ashes. This ability to regenerate and be reborn as a better version of yourself. And this also applies to any emotional or distressful situations in life. How Scorpio is able to actually go through these difficult emotional patterns and cycles and phases within their life and come out stronger. So, this idea that Scorpio isn't really phased at a certain point of life by some of these more difficult or challenging obstacles in life. Scorpio has this ability to simply conquer and achieve the things that they want, regardless of the obstacles or challenges that are in the way. And so, from the outside, many people see this as optimism. Again, when people are looking at the surface of Scorpio, it comes off as very cool, very relaxed, very laid back. There's this idea that Scorpio is this more relaxed and laid back personality, this open personality. Not so much. There's a lot that is hidden and locked behind that, right? So, just like how we talked about the ice representing Scorpio, it has this cool surface to it, but there's more that is condensed and hidden deep within. And so when people look at Scorpio and they look at this ability to conquer, to dominate, to overcome challenges and obstacles, and they see this as an optimism, this is not necessarily the case. Scorpio actually is a very pessimistic sign. It is a sign that tends to worry a lot about the outcome of what could happen, of what could go wrong, right? There is a certain point, though, when Scorpio gains a certain level of confidence and strength. And this is a huge turning point that allows Scorpio to overcome these darker or lower portions of the psyche. So Scorpio has this incredible ability to believe in themselves, to have the strength to know that they can overcome difficulties and obstacles. Again, this is not necessarily optimism because there's still this idea that Scorpio knows that there's a threat. Scorpio knows that there are darker or hidden intentions of others around them, that Scorpio knows that something could go wrong. And so Scorpio simply has this inner strength, this sheer force of will to push through the obstacles of life. And again, this is not to say that Scorpio is tough. Scorpio is very much sensitive at the core, but this sensitivity actually allows Scorpio to become stronger, right? We have this idea in our everyday reality that strength is about being tough. There is something, though, to the vulnerability of Scorpio that makes it the strongest of the signs. So, this ability to bounce back, this ability to go through emotional distress and find the strength to rise out of it. This is a huge karmic ability of Scorpio to overcome the difficulties, to overcome the shadow aspects of life. And in this way, Scorpio can actually become a teacher or a counselor. Because if we look at the actual chart, especially for those of you with a Scorpio moon or a Scorpio ascendant, Jupiter is controlling the second house of speech. And so Scorpio actually has this ability to become an excellent teacher or leader or counselor of some kind. Because Scorpio is able to go through these experiences to overcome these obstacles and difficulties. And as Scorpio gains this experience of how to overcome the shadow aspects of life, Scorpio is able to teach this, to share this with others who are also going through distress. And so Scorpio does have this ability to be this sort of teacher or counselor with Sagittarius controlling that second house of speech. And so this is something that typically happens for a Scorpio ascendant. Again, you want to look at everything that's going on in the chart, of course, before making this judgment. But typically, with Jupiter controlling that second house, the speech becomes a powerful tool for uplifting other people because Scorpio has been through the darkness. It has been able to rise up out of it into the light. So Scorpio has this wisdom, this knowledge of how to overcome difficulties and obstacles in life. Sharing this with others then becomes a great passion of Scorpio. Now, we talked a little bit about how Scorpio is very cautious. It can be very paranoid. This is especially so because Saturn is controlling that third house and fourth house, right? This idea that in social settings, in connections, in being around others, that people have hidden motives, that people have hidden intentions, or that things can go wrong. That third house is our house of courage, right? It is originally the house of Gemini, where it has the skills, it has the curiosity to go out and get what it wants. But with Saturn controlling that house, there is a hesitance, there's a cautiousness about how can I plan this all out strategically so that it will work? How can I control this situation so that nothing is going to go wrong in this situation? And so there's a hesitance there of thinking about what will happen if there is a mistake? What will happen if something goes wrong? What are the true intentions of others? And this hesitancy, this cautiousness, is good on one end because it gives Scorpio the patience to calculate out moves and to build a proper strategy of how to go about achieving the things in life. And so there is a patience to Scorpio, right? When we talk about Scorpio and Aries, they are both controlled by Mars. But the strategy that a lot of astrologers have used is that Aries is like the soldier who runs out into the battle impulsively, and Scorpio is like the soldier who hides out and plans a sneak attack, right? Is able to figure out how to find the right moment to strike. So, this patience, this strategy of Scorpio also lending Scorpio this intellect and this ability to calculate the correct moves, this is a good thing, of course. But on the negative end, this also creates this hesitancy, this fear, this mistrust of others with this Saturn energy controlling the third house. And so this can be very difficult in terms of connection, in terms of getting close to others. Others can feel this sort of distance or space when interacting with a Scorpio. Again, there's this cool and detached demeanor that is on the surface when it comes to Scorpio. And so this becomes very difficult in terms of gaining the trust, gaining the loyalty, right? And this is where Taurus controlling that seventh house becomes an important factor. This need for loyalty and consistency in connections is highly important to Scorpio. Scorpio wants to know what are your true intentions and motives. Can I trust you? Can I depend on you? So this is a huge factor when it comes to relationships and connection is this hesitancy of this Saturn ruled third house. Now, when we also talk about the difficulty of this Scorpio placement, we talk about Aquarius controlling that fourth house, and the fourth house being our state of mind. This idea that Scorpio feels very much unique and different and has this difficulty fitting in or being like others. There's something about Scorpio that stands out, right? There's something about Scorpio that doesn't blend in well. And so, especially depending on where you are on your journey in life, this can bring up difficulties in terms of feeling this distance or feeling this inability to connect with others also through this Aquarius fourth house. This feeling of being shunned or being judged or being pushed aside with this Aquarius fourth house, where this becomes very difficult to express oneself, where you feel this distance, you feel this feeling of being unique and different and misunderstood through this placement. And again, we talked about this in the video for Scorpio Ascendant, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you want to know more about what it looks like to have a Scorpio Ascendant, make sure to check out that video. I will leave a link above and down below in the description. But there is this idea that Scorpio is meant to lead, with Leo controlling the 10th house of career and status. And so, this feeling of being unique and different, of not fitting in, of standing out, this also aids in this ability to lead in this very magnetic and charismatic way, with the sun here in the 10th house of status, where you have this dominance, this presence about you that makes others want to follow behind you. And so this is highly connected to you being unique and true to who you are with this placement. There's also a difficulty here with Pisces controlling the 5th house. The 5th house has a lot to do with how we express ourselves. And with this controlling the 5th house, there is a lot of mystical and spiritual knowledge that is here. Again, Scorpio is very much connected to the occult, to mysticism. But with Pisces, which is a very spiritual and mystical sign as well, in this 5th house of knowledge, there's a lot of deep past life knowledge that's coming through here. And so a lot of people here with the sign Scorpio, they know a lot that others don't understand how they know this, right? And so this goes back to the idea of the old soul, or of an individual who is wise beyond their years. So this might be a person who in their early childhood knows a lot of knowledge and information that someone their own age wouldn't. There's this mystical or past life knowledge that is here with Pisces in the 5th house. But there's also, if we go to the expression side of this 5th house, there is a difficulty here because with Pisces in this 5th house, there's a desire or an ability to love with full capacity. Pisces, remember, is the sign that has no ego. It is a selfless sign. It's the last sign of the zodiac where we go back to source. And so Pisces in this 5th house gives this selfless and this open type of love, this ability to love without boundaries, to love without conditions, to selflessly love others. And this becomes a difficulty here as well, because there are many Scorpio ascendants who have this difficulty around actually, again, trusting people, because you're giving so much of your love to others. And how much are you giving in return? This Pisces sign being about sacrifice and surrender, there is this idea that how much are you surrendering to someone, and how much are they willing to give back to you? And this also comes along the lines of boundaries and trust, and how this can be something that a Scorpio ascendant is very paranoid or very hesitant about. And so if a Scorpio ascendant is in a relationship that they can trust a person fully, that they can fully depend on a person, there's this ability to love in full capacity, this ability to love in a very selfless and open way. Again, this is something that becomes difficult. And we see this also with Taurus controlling that 7th house. Remember that Taurus is actually the Mulatricone sign for the moon, and it's where the moon is exalted. So Taurus, even though we think of money and luxury and physical things that are connected to Taurus, Taurus is the original karka for family. So Taurus is very nurturing. It is a very nurturing and caring type of sign. And so again, if a Scorpio ascendant is able to be in a connection where they are trusting the other person 100%. There's this ability to love in a very full and endearing way, but this is something that requires a lot of trust and loyalty for this to happen. Again, this being a very secretive sign. Now, if we think about Aries in the sixth house, this also brings up a challenge or difficulty around Scorpio ascendant. And this is, again, we talked a little bit about this before, this primal energy, this desire to protect and defend one's territory. And so when a Scorpio ascendant is challenged, when a Scorpio ascendant comes across a potential enemy or threat, again, there's this desire to attack immediately. And you want to look at where Mars is in your chart also, and if there are any planets in the sixth house, because this can be significantly diminished, this desire to attack and threatened, of course, depending on the placements in your chart. But typically, with Aries controlling this sixth house, there is a quick impulse to attack others who threaten you. And again, there's a karma around this because remember that Scorpio is here to release and let go of past karmas. And so, what tends to happen here is that people from your previous life will come around and they will test you. They will try to stir things up in you. And by you not responding, it is also a part of this releasing or letting go of karma. There's this idea that Scorpio doesn't need to care about what others think or believe. Scorpio being this sign that is resilient to challenges and obstacles. And so, does there really need to be a battle or a dispute that happens? This becomes a question for those of you with a Scorpio ascendant when you run into these challenges or these opponents. Is is this a situation that really needs some sort of confrontation? Is this a situation where you really need to attack the other person? And so I think that along with this placement, there needs to be a level of patience and understanding with other people, right? There's this idea that Scorpio lives by these certain principles and morals, especially if you have Jupiter placed in a positive position in your chart. If Jupiter is not damaged, then you're definitely going to have strong morals, strong ethics, strong integrity with Jupiter controlling your second house of your family upbringing. Typically, this is what happens. And so Scorpio has these beliefs, these philosophies that it lives by, that we should do right by others, that we should be a certain way, right? And this can be very difficult to get around. And so if you're coming across people who are purposely trying to offend you, purposely trying to stir things up, this can definitely lead to wanting to attack or wanting to seek out revenge on those who try to threaten you. Again, because there's this belief that others should have respect for you, others should be respectful of you and your space as a Scorpio ascendant. Again, though, does there need to be a situation of attacking or reacting with this Aries sixth house energy? Or can there be a simple discussion? Can there be a peaceful confrontation, an ability to address and bring up the difficulty that is happening with this other person? And so this is something that a lot of Scorpio ascendants can struggle with, especially if you are on the younger side with this energy. Is does there need to really be a battle, or can you just address this person simply and let them know that they are crossing boundaries that you are not okay with? This is something that is strongly connected to Scorpio. Now, if we look at the eighth house, we have this mercurial energy of Gemini, along with Virgo controlling the 11th house. And so there is this idea that also in a Scorpio ascendant's life, there is no stability. There's constant changes that are happening. especially internally with Gemini controlling this eighth house, which is a very internal house, right? We talked a little bit about how that eighth house is like a pit, right? It's the original house of Scorpio, where there tends to be a lot of crisis, a lot of sudden events that can happen through this eighth house. And so with Gemini there being a very quick and spontaneous type of sign, there tends to be a lack of stability in a Scorpio ascendant's life. There is no promise of life staying the same or being comfortable in the life of a Scorpio ascendant. There's always constant growth, constant transformation, constant changes that are happening in the life of a Scorpio ascendant. And along with this, we have the moon controlling the ninth house, which is a blessing, right? Many Scorpio ascendants are highly blessed with this moon energy that is controlling their ninth house. However, when it comes to belief systems, again, there is this difficulty where the moon is a very emotional planet. And so many of you can change your belief or your philosophy by the emotional experiences that you are going through. And so, in particular, you want to look at where the moon is, making sure that the moon is not badly damaged. Because if so, you can go through some very difficult emotional experiences that can potentially take you over to the dark side, right? This is a situation where if you are feeling a certain way by a certain situation, it can make you change your whole identity, right? Scorpio ascendants tend to identify with their emotional experiences that they go through. And so this is something that you want to refrain from doing as a Scorpio ascendant. You want to be able to detach yourself from these heavier emotions that can potentially damage or cause destruction internally within yourself. This experience or difficulty that you go through in life should not change you for the worse. It should change you for the better, right? As you're going through these experiences and obstacles in life, there is this ability to gain strength and resilience through it, and this ability to heal or let go of these deeper emotional attachments. This is how a Scorpio ascendant grows in their life by holding on to resentment, by staying stuck in the past. That does not help you to grow or evolve. It only helps you by working through these emotional difficulties. And along with that, there can be a sensitivity around your belief systems, right? Where if your belief systems are challenged, if someone tells you that you are wrong or that the knowledge that you have acquired is wrong, there can be a reaction, an emotional sensitivity around this as well. Again, another area where Scorpio wants to be cautious of. The main lesson or reality of a Scorpio ascendant is releasing, letting go, and of Scorpio in general. So, any major Scorpio placements that you have, the main objective here is to release and let go of these heavier emotional attachments. With Leo in the 10th house, we talked a little bit about how that is a positive position. You can be a great leader, a great teacher, a great inspiration for others. Your journey is from darkness into light. And so, as you are growing and improving in your life, you become a light for others. Again, with Jupiter controlling that second house, a lot of you can make excellent counselors, excellent teachers, people who can help others through difficult times, or at least supporting others through difficult times by shining this light out into the world. Now, on the negative side of that, the sun is a very harsh planet. It is mildly malefic, as we say in astrology. And so, with the sun controlling the 10th house, there can be a certain level of dominance over others. Remember that the sun represents our ego, our self esteem, our willpower. The sun is also representing our status, our dignity. It is our authority. And so, the sun represents leadership and authority. It's a very dominating type of planet. And the sun is very strong when it comes to the 10th house. Because what happens when someone is born with the sun in their 10th house? That means that they're born in the middle of the day. This is when the sun is at its strongest, right? You wouldn't want to look at the sun in the middle of the day. It would be very blinding, right? So there's a lot of power, a lot of energy to the sun controlling your 10th house, where you can make an excellent leader. You can be very dominating, very authoritative in this position. On the negative side, you can be very dominating in a negative way, though. So you can have this control over others that is negative, that is a power play with this position, where you can enjoy having power over others or dominating over others. And especially, you want to check where your sun is in your chart. If your sun is in a weak position, this can potentially make this worse, where there can actually be power struggles and ego issues that can arise in your chart as well. Now, with Libra controlling the 12th house, this is where, again, relationship issues can be a big area for a Scorpio ascendant, as Venus is controlling your 7th house of partnership. This is a good placement for Venus to rule this 7th house of partnership, where you can very much have a harmonious partnership. You can have a happy partnership with someone. But with Libra controlling your 12th house, there's always this fear around abandonment or loss or rejection with this energy, where this 12th house, remember, is the house of expenditures. It's where we give our energy away. And so there is this sort of paranoia or fear around, will this relationship work out? Will I lose this person? Will this last? And so this can happen also in terms of relationships with this position. And this can become a reality as well, depending on the factors that are playing out in your partner's chart, depending on your dasha period, and other factors. If a person is not compatible for you, this person definitely can leave very quickly for a Scorpio ascendant with this 12th house in play. If it is not a balanced and harmonious partnership, this can definitely end and fade very quickly with this position. And so, again, there's this idea that Scorpio is here to let go, it's here to release these heavier attachments. So, the more that you're holding on to certain attachments that don't serve you, the more that you're going to continue to see losses, the more that you're going to continue to see uncomfortable changes happening in your life that can be very damaging on an emotional level. And so, remembering that anything that is not healthy for you, anything that is not for you, is not something that you can hold on to for long. This idea that needing to surrender and let go of those things that are not serving you is very important for a Scorpio, whether you are a Scorpio ascendant or whether you have any other dominant placements in Scorpio. This area is going to very much be an area where you have to let go of those attachments that no longer serve you. Again, going back to the analogy of the scorpion expelling poison out of its stinger, needing to release those things that no longer serve you. Now, let's talk a little bit about the planetary placements as well, because this also plays out if you have a planet that is positioned in Scorpio, especially if you have a personal planet like Mercury, Venus, Mars, the Sun. These can very much affect you as well. And there can also be a lot of karma surrounding the other planetary placements of Jupiter, Saturn, and the nodes as well. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these placements. And I'm not going to go super in depth. If you want me to cover more about any of these particular placements, let me know down below in the comments and I will bring it up in a future video. But if you have the Sun in Scorpio, and we talked a little bit about the Sun in Scorpio, I will leave the link to that video down below in the description for those who are curious. But when the Sun comes into Scorpio, this is an interesting placement because the Sun is friends with Mercury. So we would think that this would be a very happy placement to have. However, remember that Scorpio is co-ruled by Ketu. The Sun and Ketu are enemies. And so this gives a contradictory effect where, yes, with the Sun in Scorpio, this can give you a lot of willpower, a lot of confidence, a lot of determination. And the Sun is happy to have all of this passion and strength of Scorpio. But also, the Sun wants to shine, it wants to be seen and noticed, and Scorpio does not. Right? Scorpio is very secretive, it's very mysterious. And so there is a contradictory effect with the Sun in Scorpio, where this tends to give more of a reserved personality, more of a mysterious personality, one that typically can't be pinned down. And so if you have the Sun in Scorpio, you may be a person who likes to travel a lot, a person who likes to always be on the go, someone who doesn't like to be pinned down or tied down to any sort of commitment or to be analyzed or observed by others. You're always constantly moving, always constantly doing something. This inability to actually pin you down or tie you down with this Scorpio energy. And with all of this passion, with all of this intensity, and these shadow aspects of K2 involved, this can, on a lower end, make you someone who is very much into partying, into drinking, into sexual activities with this energy. Scorpio is a very intense sign. And so you want to be careful about this. With the Sun in Scorpio, there can be a passion or a desire in terms of intimacy also. And this becomes dangerous because what happens here, and we'll talk more about this with Venus and Mars also, because these are also two other planets where this strongly plays out, is this desire to be intimate with a partner. And by trying to be intimate, many Scorpios, again on the lower end, will try to jump straight to sex, will try to jump straight to a sexual inter- interaction instead of actually building an emotional attachment, right? Which is really what Scorpio is looking for, right? It's a water sign. It's looking for a trusting connection. But remember that Scorpio also is very secretive. It keeps these emotions locked deep within. And so, this desire to find intimacy in a deeper way, but not being willing to show any sort of feeling, also is going to give a desire to go straight to the physical interaction to find that deeper connection. And this is connected to the fact that on the other end of the axis of Scorpio, we have Taurus, which is a very physical and materialistic sign. Now, on the higher end, Scorpio, the Sun in Scorpio can give someone this mystical or occult like energy. So, this can make a great teacher, a great healer, someone who has a resource of mystical knowledge with the Sun in Scorpio. And it gives a strong desire to find yourself at a deeper level. Because remember that the Sun represents the ego, it is connected to the identity. And so many people here with a Sun in Scorpio are trying to figure out who they are at a deeper level. Remember that Scorpio is about uncovering the things that are hidden deep underground. It has this connection to deep hidden knowledge. And so someone with the Sun in Scorpio would definitely want to find themselves on a deeper level, which would most likely draw them towards mysticism, towards occultism, towards spiritual practices of trying to understand yourself at this deeper core level. With this, the Moon in Scorpio, this is an interesting position. The Moon is debilitated, especially within the first degrees of Scorpio. This is a very intense placement because what happens here is the Moon is about what comforts us, what nurtures us. It is about our emotional fulfillment. And Scorpio is controlled by Ketu. Ketu is already fulfilled. It doesn't want to seek out any fulfillment. Ketu wants to take us out of this physical construct that we live in and show us that there's more beyond this, right? Ketu wants to show us the knowledge that is hidden, again, connected to the Scorpio energy. And so emotions can be a difficult area for a Scorpio because there can be a heavy detachment from your emotions with the moon in Scorpio, or there can be a heavy attachment towards your emotions. And so there can be this extreme with a Scorpio moon where you either have so much control over your emotion that you are not in tune with your feelings, that you're not able to express your feelings, or you are so out of control with your emotions that you can go to emotional extremes and have this deep passion, this deep intensity that can almost take you over with this position. And again, this is going to depend heavily on the nakshatras as well, but especially within the Jyeshta nakshatra, there's a high level of intensity in terms of emotions that a person can have with the moon in Scorpio. And so when the moon comes into Scorpio, there is a strong need to find a balance on an emotional level of how much are you going to lean into your emotions and how much control do you have over your emotions. Scorpio tends to fall on either extreme, but there needs to be a balance that is found within this position. Also, with the moon in Scorpio, this makes someone highly intelligent because remember that Scorpio is about the things that are hidden, and the moon represents the mind. An individual with a Scorpio moon is able to tap deep within their mind. This gives a high level of imagination, a high level of memory. This gives a high level of intelligence overall with this position. For those who have Mercury and Scorpio, this is a neutral position. Mercury and Mars have a bit of a interesting relationship. Mars sees Mercury as an enemy, but Mercury sees Mars as neutral. And Mercury, for the most part, plays a neutral role. So when Mercury comes into Scorpio, this becomes very intense because this happy go lucky, playful energy of Mercury is now having to adapt to the intensity and the depth of Scorpio. As Mercury comes into Scorpio, this gives a person a curiosity. Remember that Mercury is a very curious planet, very analytical planet. It's looking for details, looking for information. But when it comes into Scorpio, this becomes more intense, where there is this strong desire to gain knowledge and information. This placement is good for a detective or for someone who can analyze information at a deeper level. On the other end of this, if you think of this in a negative way, this can also give someone this lack of fear when it comes to curiosity. This can create a situation where a person will wander into dangerous situations, where a person will wander into moments of crisis and difficulties and destruction out of this curiosity of trying to figure out what is hidden in the dark. And so this can be very dangerous as well, depending on how this is positioned in your chart and how this is actually playing out for you. Now, when Venus comes into Scorpio, this is very intense. Venus is neutral with Mars. So there's a neutral relationship between Venus and Mars. Reason being is because Venus is representing our feminine energy, right? Venus is connected to love, peace, beauty, luxury, comfort, relaxation, enjoyment. Venus wants to bring us peace and pleasure in our life. It wants us to experience the most happiness and the most peace that we can have. Mars, on the other hand, brings a lot of challenges and obstacles. Mars wants us to gain a sense of strength and confidence to face the difficulties in life. It is representing the masculine energy. So Mars is all about aggression, determination, willpower, protection, dominance. So these two energies are very much contrasting one another with this Venus in Scorpio. And what this does, because remember that this is not Aries, right? Aries is very direct, it's very in your face when it comes to this aggression and willpower of Mars. Scorpio is much more secretive in this. When Venus comes into Scorpio, this gives a strong urge, and we talked a little bit about this when we talked about the Sun in Scorpio also. This gives a huge urge towards intimacy and pleasure because Venus is representing sexuality, sensuality, love, and romance. Venus is all about pleasure and connection. And with it in Scorpio, which is about understanding the things that are hidden, that are deeper, that are underground, this Venus in Scorpio gives a strong desire towards intimacy and connection. But what happens here is that Scorpio is very impulsive. It's controlled by Mars, right? And this is not the strongest position for a planet to be in Scorpio. And so what happens here, majority of the time with this placement on the lower end, is that this gives a person who will jump straight into a sexual interaction because this person is looking for love and connection on a deeper level, but doesn't have the patience to wait. And so this person wants to find intimacy through simply just jumping into a sexual interaction. So this can be something that is very damaging, very difficult, as this person really is looking for a deeper connection, but they're doing it in the wrong way. And so this can actually bring about a lot of emotional hardship and disappointment as well. Remember that Scorpio is connected to those heavier, deeper emotions, those emotional struggles that we can go through. And so this can be a very difficult placement for a person to have. On the other end of this, though, on the higher end, this can give someone who is very loving, very protective, very much someone who is able to love at a very deep capacity, someone who's able to be very intimate and who is able to almost love on a spiritual level with this placement. Remember that Scorpio is connected to mysticism, it's connected to spirituality. So this makes love become a spiritual connection as well. In terms of hobbies, interests, desires, this tends to lead someone towards darker things in life. This can give an interest and fascination in occult knowledge, in mysticism, in detective work, in horror stories, and things that are darker or hidden when Venus comes into Scorpio. And again, all of this is going to depend on how everything is positioned in your chart. Mars in Scorpio. This is an interesting position. Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, so it is in its own sign. But remember that Scorpio is also controlled by Ketu, and Mars and Ketu have a bit of a difficult relationship. And so Mars in Scorpio, first of all, it gives a tremendous amount of drive and willpower. We're putting Mars, which is already representing strength and dominance, into the sign of Scorpio, which is by far one of the most dominant and passionate of the signs. This gives a strong level of passion and strength with this position. Also, though, this can create a situation where a person sort of attacks in a way that is very strategic and very well planned out. And so instead of a person being very impulsive like a Mars and Aries might be, this person would wait for the right moment to attack their opponent. So this creates this sort of strategic and secretive way of attacking people. Remember that Mars is our fighting ability. Mars is our ability to stand and fight. And in Scorpio, this becomes a very deadly position where a person can use a lot of strategy, a lot of cunning to outsmart their opponent. Mars in Scorpio also can make a person very impulsive. It can make a person who is, again, having a lot of passion, having a lot of strength, a lot of energy to burn up. The Scorpio energy is, again, very passionate. Mars is about our energy level, it is about our ability to expend and use up our physical and mental energy. And so this can give a person a lot of energy and willpower with this position. Now, when Jupiter comes into Scorpio, this is a great position. Jupiter and Mars are friendly with one another. And so this can give a person who makes a really great teacher, a really great counselor, someone who has a lot of wisdom. Again, Scorpio is about the things that are buried deep underground, and Jupiter represents wisdom, teachers, mentors. So this would give a person who has a deep reservoir of knowledge and wisdom to share with others. And in this position, this doesn't become as secretive. Again, Scorpio here is very friendly with this sign of Jupiter. And so this would give a person who wants to share certain secrets or mysteries with others to help them in their life. Jupiter is about morality, it's about teaching, it's about uplifting. This person would want to share mystical wisdom and knowledge with others to help them in their life. Now, on the negative end, Jupiter is a planet of expansion. This is a planet of the good things, the benevolent things in life. And so with Jupiter and Scorpio, this can give a sense of obsession or overindulgence as well. Jupiter is, again, about expansion. It's about how can we broaden our horizons? How can we have more experiences? And in a sign like Scorpio, that is very much about passion, intensity, obsession, this can give a person this overindulgence where they can do too much or try to take on too much at a time. And so that is something to be cautious of in that position. Saturn in Scorpio. This is an interesting placement. The effects of Scorpio are not as strong when Saturn comes into Scorpio. This is a neutral position because Mars and Saturn are not friendly with one another, right? They're in the shadow of each other. So Saturn actually pacifies this Martian energy of Scorpio in this position. This gives a tremendous amount of discipline and patience. This gives a person who is able to overcome impulses and desires very easily through this position. Someone who's very hesitant with this. And this can go to the point where this person is too hesitant, where they are too much reserved and not able to take on opportunities in life. Remember that Saturn and Mars are not exactly friends. This is stopping that energy from fully being expressed with Saturn here. Now, on the positive end, again, this gives a person a tremendous amount of patience and discipline. This can give a person who's very good with strategy, very good with planning things, very good with taking their time and putting the real work and effort into their desires, into the things that they want in life. This also can give a good teacher in terms of mystical knowledge and wisdom. Saturn, like Jupiter, is a very mature planet. Saturn, though, is much more restrictive. And so this might give a teacher who's a little bit more harder, a little bit more rough around the edges than Jupiter in its inspiring and uplifting ways. When Rahu comes into Scorpio, this is an interesting position. Rahu and Ketu are exalted in the sign of Scorpio through my teachings of Vedic astrology. I've seen it talked about in different ways where it's exalted in different signs depending on different people. But from what I have learned and gathered, this energy of Rahu and Ketu are exalted in Scorpio, where they are in opposition to the exaltation of the moon in Taurus. Because remember that the moon is all about what nurtures us, what fulfills us. But these energies of Rahu and Ketu are about the shadowy aspects of life. It's an illusion. It doesn't really fulfill us at the end of the day, right? So Rahu and Scorpio, What happens with this? Well, Rahu rules the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius, like Scorpio, has a lot of occult knowledge. Aquarius is about knowledge, technology, exploration. And so Aquarius has a lot of knowledge that other people don't have access to. And so Rahu in Scorpio actually increases this influence of Scorpio, where this gives a tremendous amount of occult knowledge, a tremendous amount of scientific knowledge. This can give a person who's very good with research, with detective work, with discovering the things that are unknown. This also, though, can give a person who has a lot of obsessive desires and a lot of long-term hopes and dreams for themselves. Rahu, remember, is a head without a body. It is hungry. It is always looking for more. And so this can give a person who has strong desires, strong things that they want, with Scorpio on the lower end being a very obsessive type of sign. Ketu and Scorpio, very interesting placement. Ketu is at home and exalted in the sign of Scorpio. And so Ketu feels very comfortable in this position of Scorpio. This gives a deep connection to spirituality. It gives a strong ability to transform and to spiritually evolve within your life. You can have a lot of deep experiences of leaving your body, of going through these spiritual practices and these experiences that enlighten you in a big way with Ketu and Scorpio. On the negative side, though, this can make you someone who's very reclusive, someone who doesn't like to have a lot of interaction with the outside world. Because remember that Scorpio is very secretive and Ketu is about uncovering the things that are hidden beyond this physical reality. And so this can create a situation where a person is all about meditation, all about being alone, all about being in this space of detachment from the things of the material world. And so this can give a person who's very reclusive, someone who is very detached and disconnected from this physical reality and spending most of their time in this deeper inner spiritual world of Scorpio. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the nakshatras. Again, I'm not going to go into super depth about these nakshatras. If you want me to talk about more in a future video, I will let you know. But the first degrees of Scorpio are going to be ruled by the Vrischika nakshatra. Vrischika is symbolized by the triumphant arch. And so this nakshatra is all about victory, conquest. This nakshatra is about winning championships. And so with this Vrischika nakshatra, there becomes a strong desire to achieve a lot in life. If you have a Scorpio placement with Vrischika in it, especially if your moon is in there, if your sun is in there, if you have your ascendant in this nakshatra, this really gives a strong desire to achieve great things in life, to be a champion, to be a conqueror, right? And this can give a strong desire towards luxury. That first half of the Shaka is controlled by Libra as well. So this can give a strong desire towards luxury, towards wealth, towards accumulating a high position in society. And again, this will depend upon everything that's going on in your chart. And if you want me to talk more about this, I will bring it up in a future video. For those who are born in the Anuradha Nakshatra, this is a very different energy, right? And I was born under this. This is a very different placement for Scorpio. Anuradha is ruled by Saturn, which is very interesting, right? Because Saturn and Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, are not friends. And so this gives a little bit of a contrast in terms of the energy of this Scorpio placement. This is symbolized by a lotus. And so this idea of blooming out of muddy waters, right? This ability to go through great spiritual growth, this ability to rise into a position of light, of warmth, of innocence, of joy. And so, actually, this nakshatra of Anuradha is one of the least darker nakshatras of Scorpio. This one is going to be much more friendly, much more suited around helping others. This is going to give a loyal friend, someone who's a great companion in this nakshatra of Anuradha. So this one is a little bit more on the side of being more gentle, being more friendly, in the middle here of Scorpio. The main feature here, though, is transformation. Again, this idea of the lotus, something beautiful blooming out of muddy water. So this Anuradha Nakshatra has a tremendous ability to transform out of difficult situations in life. This nakshatra also can be very independent, so this can give someone who is a bit on the defiant or rebellious side, someone who wants to do things their own way and be their own person, again, because of the rulership of Saturn. Remember that Saturn controls that fourth house where a Scorpio ascendant feels very much different, unique, wanting to do things in their own way. Now, the last nakshatra is Jyeshta. This is controlled by Mercury, and this is symbolized by the umbrella. This is a very powerful nakshatra. Just as an umbrella protects you from the rain, this becomes a very protective nakshatra. And so this can give a person a great deal of strength. This can make a person very possessive, very loyal, very dominating, someone who wants to protect and defend. This also, though, because this falls within the Pisces Navamsa, this also can give a person who has a very deep level of insight and wisdom that they're able to pull out of the deeper recesses of the mind. And this can make someone very good in terms of government organizations or farming their own types of careers or industries, making breakthroughs and discoveries. So there's this deep level of inspiration and insight that is here with this nakshatra. So that's a little bit on those nakshatras for Scorpio. Again, if you want me to go into a little bit more depth about how these can affect you, depending on what placements you have in these nakshatras, feel free to let me know. I will bring that up in a future video. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like as well as a comment. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new content. Again, we have a lot to cover as we have a lot of changes that are coming here in the month of April. In our next video, we will be talking about this new moon that is coming up here on the 11th. And we have a lot to talk about in terms of the eclipses that are coming in May as well. So a lot that's coming up here in the future that you don't want to miss. Make sure you hit that notification bell so that you can stay informed. If there's anything that you'd like for me to add or talk about in terms of Vedic astrology, let me know in the comments and I will bring it up in a future video. If you want to learn more about Vedic astrology, there is a link down below in the description along with the comments. There is a course available in the Facebook group and on Patreon. Again, all of that is down below in the description and in the comments for those who are interested. I want to thank you all so much for joining. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.